Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
Welcome back, guys. We want to thank our newest Patreon members.
Yes, we want to thank Anita, Rochelle, Darsha, and Brett. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you guys for your support. You keep us going through these times, and I had another video lined up, but decided let's do something a little lighter because wow, it has been it's been a heck of a ride lately.
The energies have been really heavy, along with the sun and everything. It's just like piling on top, on top, on top, and people are tired.
Tired, exhausted, and again, so many people are under the weather. I went off early. As we get up early, we're typically awake, certainly by 5 we're awake, sometimes 3. And that's going to be another video that I have in mind as I was just going and reading through the Holy Science, which is by the guru of Yogananda, Sri Yugaswar, who gave us the cycle of the yugas that we utilize all the time. And it's a small book, and it's a quick read if you're familiar with basic Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma. But I was also reading before that a book which I'm almost finished with, of that Chinese immortal who lived a fascinating life as well, and I wasn't aware of how much was documented about his life. And fantastic life of probably somewhere around 250 to 300 years, which sounds incredible, but it's not. And when we look at everything that we're given in our mainstream world, we have to always be aware that there's always agendas behind things. And so when you go deep diving in for the truth, and what we're going to be talking about is really reincarnation and transmigration of the soul, the truth will set you free. And here you have, unless you are born again, you cannot see the kingdom of God. And so often we take many things very, very literally, or the majority of people will take things literally, but then when you have something like this, they don't take it literally. And, they'll say, that's an allegory. What does that mean to you? Well, you have to be baptized. You have to be infused with the Holy Spirit. How do you do that? Well, again, this is why we have 40,000 different versions of Christianity, because it depends on which one you're talking to. Could be a variety of different dogmatic approaches. But perhaps what's meant here is a little bit more literal.
What it means for me is all about the awakening and understanding that everything that you thought you knew, everything you thought was correct is different, and it's changed, and it's a huge perception shift. Just huge, where you now look at everything through a different set of glasses, even looking at everything through a whole new telescope and seeing things for the way that they always have been, and not for those things that you have been taught. So it is really difficult. It's a tough thing to do, to lay down everything that you thought you knew and understand things for the way they are when it comes to a mind, body, spirit perspective, and knowing that this is your journey and you're the one who gets to create it. You are the master painter here. You are the master manifester, and that you have so much power in your hands to do with this life as you choose. And that's just really such a huge perception shift. I think, to me, this is like we are really being reborn. It's so much like being reborn and opening up your eyes to a whole nother world.
Absolutely. This is John 3:3, by the way. John 3:33, master number. All the appropriate symbolism. Yes, my dear, absolutely. Mark 9:13, Elijah has come. What did Jesus mean? But I tell you, Elijah has come, and they have done to him everything they wished, just as is written about him. Now again, who put together the Bible? That's the main thing, is what do you really have here? They do give us some truths. There are absolutely much more mystical, metaphysical truths that are deep in there, as well as predictive programming, and also, of course, red herrings. It's all of the above. So then we need to really utilize, when we go deep diving, we really have to utilize our discernment. And this is where I was saying, if you're familiar with other traditions, or if you're gifted like Cindy with the ability to just jump into the Akashic Records anytime you want, you can pick up a lot of things that are going to right away resonate, or they're not going to resonate at all. And, this is traditionally alluding to John the Baptist, obviously, speaking of John the Baptist. So does that mean that the Bible is saying that John the Baptist was really Elijah? And then we have the two witnesses in Revelation, which many take to be Elijah and Enoch, that end up, according to the book of Revelation, killed and their bodies left out for so long, and then they're resurrected again. There's all these different little pieces, little tidbits that are curiosities, and they will be explained in different ways according to different people. Have you ever looked at any of these photos of like Jack Black and Paul Revere? You wonder how many people in what we would call either in the limelight, stars, people that are in the movies, the theater, etc., political theater, which again, it's kind of the same thing, as most people are starting to at least get a little clue that there's something there along those lines. I mean, look at this resemblance. It really, it's like the emotions. How about Michael Jackson here? Oh, wow. We know there was a lot of modifying going on with him. Johnny Depp, yes. Well, there's only so many faces, right? There's only so many facial possibilities. Whoops, that one didn't come through. Okay, Judy Zipper. Huh. Interesting. I mean, gosh, it gotta be a relative, right? I mean, you just look at these, how close. And like Cindy was saying, how do we know these are not really the actors doing a period piece, or, the Matrix inserting these actors' photos as if they were taking 100, 200, 300 years ago, whatever it is. Again, we don't really. I mean, we could go by the feel. What do you feel with this? Do you have any sort of vibe on this, if this is something, or if this is just simply maybe somebody from the same soul stream?
Well, I do feel two separate personalities when I look at these. So I guess that's one way, you look at one, and on the other hand, I look at them both and I feel this neat and proper type of attitude when it comes to facing the public. So I could safely say there's two separate personalities here.
And, again, a lot of what we might take to be perhaps a reincarnation could just simply be a resonant spirit, so to speak, as we do tend to come back with the same groups time and time again. And, some of the energies feel interestingly alike and other ones dissimilar. So this little article is talking about, what does Judaism say about reincarnation? And again, there's all these different branches. And within the Abrahamic traditions too, we have the mystical side of things. We have the Sufis, who are very different than, say your typical Sunni or Shia as far as Islam goes. And with Judaism, again, we have those that are studying the Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, and their point of view will be different. When we look to the East, we find that reincarnation and transmigration of the soul is the rule. It's the norm. It's just what was accepted. It's not like it's any big deal. It's a given, so to speak. And you find that in the mystical point of view on the Western tradition, it's kind of more of the same. Many great thinkers like Pythagoras have spoken on these topics and thought about what happens to the soul. And it's interesting, too, because you have the Catholic concept of purgatory, and then we have Sheol, and we have Hades. And, they're kind of like these temporary zones. They're a little different place that the soul goes to, kind of an in-between realm. And Cindy has talked before about the in-between.
There is the in-between, and that's definitely a real place. And it's a real place that when you practice these mind, body, spirit practices, you can go to them, and then you can see for yourself, even though you're in your body, you go to this other realm. You're still in this other realm. So I think that's one of the things that can help people crack open their perception and understand that this isn't it. It's not just in this body. You can go other places and have your soul reside in other places. It's really quite a fascinating experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And, gosh, there's been so many books over the years, many mansions. You remember, Edgar Casey did so much talking about different incarnations. His work was fabulous and fascinating. And, there's so many others that have maybe focused on different things, but the reincarnation will come into play time and time again. Whether we're looking at the work of John Mack and the abduction phenomenon, but then you also get these little glimpses into reincarnation and what the soul is doing. The fact that people could be abducted in the sense that an astral component to them is what's taken, even though the physical body is staying put.
Yeah, that one's a really crazy one to deal with too, but it has happened to me, where I was able to go out of body and some things were done, and also with this experience I was able to see that there really is no time. There is no time. So what felt to me in my soul like it was 2 or 3 hours really was only 10 minutes. So that was another experience that I've had that tells me that there's so much more here than what they give us in the 3D.
Absolutely. And we've talked also in the past about how the Hindu concept of the cycle of the yugas, it does correlate also with the Greek concept of the different ages, and the fact that we live a different type of life. The length of life is different. And again, you have the Methuselahs from the Bible living 969 years, and we again have these long lives with the Sumerian kings list. So when we're in a dark age, we don't really come here for long. It's the blink of an eye, and we're out, and then we're perhaps back. Whereas a soul incarnating in more of a golden age, it might only take one incarnation for the entirety of that age, because it might last such a vast period of time. But yet we're in a time where there's a lot of lessons that can be learned. Patton always comes to mind because of my mom's love of history of the 1940s, and she was such a student of every aspect of World War II. And it's fascinating because now I learn and understand that my mom in some ways is more like kind of her higher self is more that type of being than I ever thought, because she was just a wonderful lighthearted soul, very lighthearted soul, but she had a depth to her. And absolutely a historian and a student of history. And Patton was one that she was fascinated by. And, while she didn't necessarily believe or disbelieve in reincarnation, she would always bring it up. His being on a battlefield and knowing he had already fought a battle there. And when we're talking about the battles between him and Rommel in 1940s, all throughout northern Africa, the very historic battles, yet he had lived a similar, technologically very different, but a similar period of great battles between what was the Roman army, the Roman Empire, and against their adversaries there in northern Africa back at the beginning of Rome gaining its foothold and its power in the Punic Wars. Just amazing time period, and culminated with literally elephants being taken from Africa, transported over into Spain, and then crossing through the Swiss Alps in order to utilize the elephants against Rome. And it just you can't understate the experience it must have been for all those involved. And when we look again to history, here you have somebody that is getting flashes. He's getting flashes. He's on the same ground that he was on 2,400 years earlier. And it's like there's this resonance, and he remembers. He can't help but remember, because it's in our soul memory.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I think the thing that we want to keep in mind here is, since there is no time, when he has these flashbacks, he's seeing what has already been. He's seeing what is, but he's seeing different time periods, and he's able to conceptualize that and utilize that to his benefit. Now, I'm not surprised when it comes to people, in a government position, that they are probably never told that there is no such thing. They're probably never told. They're probably actually taken from a younger age, and they're given the truth from a young age. And this is why they still have these abilities. And this is why so many people have abilities when they're younger, but then they go away when they're older, only because when we go to get indoctrinated, somebody tells you that didn't happen, or that's not true, or it's just your imagination, or you're just making it up. So it changes your perception. And then all of a sudden you're in this 3D world only because somebody told you were.
Yeah, absolutely. So, he recalled being with Alexander at the great siege of Tyre, fighting the Parthians for Rome as well, a Viking on his way to Valhalla. So, again, it's the journey of the soul. He was an Englishman in Agincourt, a raiding sailor. Yes.
It would be really fun. I don't know if there's his birthday and time information, but it would be fun to look at his chart like we looked at yours, to see his past lives and past lives, if they had a time of birth,
I think we could probably find that. Fighting for the House of Stuart. I mean, again, I'm kind of an avid historian too. So, these things they all resonate with me in so many ways. As you see another picture there. Fascinating. And he's not the only one. He is not the only one. As you see here, James Leninger is an American boy who claimed to have been a World War II fighter pilot named James Houston Jr. His parents were initially skeptical, but became convinced after he provided specific details about the aircraft and the circumstances of Houston's death, which were later verified. How in the world could this kid know this? And, the pictures that he drew, the battles, this is him with his mom. He had all these clear memories. Clear memories. And of course, he's got the whales there and everything. It's just really fascinating. But the fact is, it's not that it's uncommon. It's actually very common. And if you look, you can just do a little Google search. You're going to find there's tons of kids that come out and say, no, hey, this 5-year-old says that he was an African American woman killed in a fire and reincarnated. Yeah. I mean, this is so common. I've shared with you guys that my naturopathic doctor, who was Ukrainian, had memory of being actually a German soldier in World War II, and remembered how she died, and she was a male German soldier in World War II, and remembered train tracks and looking up and seeing the soldier that had shot her come up to her and then shoot her again, and she passed. Clear memory of it. She had done past life recalls. Boy believes he was reincarnated and has chilling perfect memory of his past life as a Hollywood star. So this is a boy from Oklahoma. Ryan Hammond first made the claim back in 2015 when he was 11. He told his parents he was the reincarnation of a man who had died 40 years before he had been born. It's reported that he had chilling, vivid memories of living in Hollywood in the 1940s. Yeah, absolutely. His name was Marty Martin, a movie extra and a powerful Hollywood agent. I really wouldn't doubt it. And there's a picture of Marty Martin. Can you feel the energy?
Mm-hmm. And, I think what we have here is we have a lot of parents that are afraid to really embrace that. These are very few parents who are willing to sit down and talk with their child and talk about it and see what other information they can find. And if you do have a child that's special, one of the things that I did with my daughter is she would come up and she would just tell me these things, and she's like, Mom, there's this thing over here and over there, and I would ask her, can you draw me a picture? Draw me a picture. Or do you want to sit and talk about it? Does this bother you? And just try to be very open and understanding, and with the idea that yes, they're probably going to go through a phase where they just don't really want to talk about it. They don't really care. It's almost like the veil kind of goes down usually through the teenage years. But I think there's a lot of children like this. It's just most parents are afraid of it because of certain dogmas, so they just try to erase it, or they just try to tell the child something different.
And here's another little boy who believes he's the reincarnated spirit of Lou Gehrig. It goes on, and you can see all these different stories, chilling reincarnation stories. Meet 6 people who lived before. Well, reality is most of us have lived before many, 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 many times, typically.
Countless, I'd say.
Countless. Yes, this is something that, again, when you look at the majority of the world, again, there's a big chunk of the world that might be totally non-religious, doesn't believe that there's anything after you pass on. And then you have, again, about 2/3 of the world coming from the Abrahamic tradition, which, again, is Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, most of which do not embrace the more fringe mystical type of viewpoints that do embrace reincarnation, but most, again, coming from that more fundamentalist point of view, traditional, I guess I should say, more of a traditional point of view that, again, you live once and that's it. This goes totally against this, and it's kind of the antithesis of it. And it's pretty interesting too, because when you look at the idea that you die and you wait for Judgment Day to come, there really isn't anything like that anywhere else. It doesn't pop up anywhere else. When you look at all the Aboriginal people and stuff, yeah, they believe that when we're out of the body, we're still us. We just don't have a body.
You know what happens and what I have seen is there is a certain detachment, there is a certain realization, and you're able to detach yourself from that physical body, from that life, and look at yourself, and go, oh, wow, oh, okay, well, this is why this happened, and this is why I did that. Extremely non-judgmental. You are actually the one judging yourself. Maybe you say something like, I could have done a little better. Gonna take a DNA note. Try harder the next time. And yes, these things are very real. These are true. This is how one life goes after the next. There's certain things. A lot of times I would say trauma is one of the hardest things to actually get out of one's DNA. Traumas have to be worked through until they are understood, and it can be very, very confusing, especially if it's like family trauma. But in that case, instead of really connecting or trying to deliberately connect to your ancestors, you would take a concentrated thought and say, I want to connect to my great grandpa, Pat, just make that conscious thought. And then you come back to the here and now and you let life unfold the way it does. Because whatever you do, anything that you work through, that's going to translate to the ancestors. And it also, healing, when it comes to healing, this can benefit your children and your grandchildren. Healing goes both ways. If there's generational trauma, keep in mind there can be generational healing, but you're the one who has to focus on you 100% and let the universe do what it does and spiral and adjust things as needed.
Yeah, and I've had, and it's interesting because I've had Cindy, but not only Cindy, but I've had other gifted people verify what I had gotten in visions, which was that I've had, I believe, 2 lives as a Templar. And, the Templars were ultimately, they were wiped out by the church and by the crown. And this might have a little something to do with how worked up I get when it comes to the dealings of the church, because I have visions of being tortured in a castle and of a knife going into my left kidney from behind, and then another time of having my throat cut after a long period of torture. So, I definitely, it's in me, and, it's been part of multiple missions to point this out and to point out, exactly what the system does because of these visions. But then Cindy and I also remember a life together where we were Native Americans, or what you would call Native Americans, living a real blessed life, very, very peaceful, right before the area was run over by the Europeans, which changed everything.
It did, and that every time I get those visions and those memories, it's so, there's so much happiness involved, and it becomes very, very emotional because I can sense in my soul, this is the last time we were experiencing that type of fulfillment, that type of joy, that type of, we were able to embody the world around us completely and just enjoy it. So when I do get those visions, I get a little stopped up.
Yeah, and it's fascinating too, because again, when we look to our own DNA from these incarnations, we do find that we have a common lineage that traces back to the particular area that we're talking about. So it's really kind of curious. So yeah, absolutely. And I know my last incarnation exactly, but I won't show it just because of the controllers. But again, we can remember these things. And I think what we're seeing is more and more kids are remembering. And this is what happens when we are going out of a Kali Yuga and we're going deeper into the Bronze Age. And so, as we progress deeper into the Bronze Age, heading towards the Silver Age, we will have these memories that you'll be able to remember.
And it's almost interesting because you don't forget. You are born with all of this information in hand. And right now, really, it's most of it's just sort of taught out of us, or it's traumatized out of us, and we lose this information. But it's always there. It's just a matter of creating those conditions so that you can explore it, so you can remember it, so you can talk about it, write about it, and then this stays with you.
So this little baby was born with 26 fingers, and she's thought to be an incarnation of Durga. Fascinating. Again, when you think about it, there are souls from higher realms that do come in. We get into that concept of an avatar, but we're all avatars is the bottom line. And again, the higher self does reside in the higher realms. So, but then you'll have these specific incarnations of what we might call an ascended master that comes on down with the whole intention of trying to help shift the paradigm into a more positive direction. But then again, that's what many of us are doing.
Mm-hmm. It is. And this one is really, really curious and interesting because it is said that in the end of times, Durga will come back. And what are we looking at here? We're looking at, yes, the higher self and little self are both completely separate. But how much of higher self do you bring down actually into the body in a 3D way? So this is real curious here.
And again, that is typically dependent on the yuga as well. And so again, everything is changing. That's what we need to take from this. And so make sure you get your Zen time in, do your daily meditation, your yoga, your Qigong, and keep working on that spiritual practice. It truly is the most important thing in our daily routine.
Right. If you put that first, put that number one, everything that comes after you is gonna go the way it needs to go.
Yes, and we can verify that. We've seen that in our own lives.
Oh, so
I mean, time and time again, it's like you might think, well, we got so much to do today. I can't do this. I can't do mantras. I can't do Qigong. But when we realize that the whole day might be different, and, I don't know how many negative impacts we've avoided by prioritizing it first to get ourselves in the proper frequency. So again, I cannot stress how important it is to do, if you're so inclined, the mantras, the Vedic mantras, the Hindu, Sanskrit mantras are so powerful because you are literally contacting beings that can contact you right back and bless you, but you have to ask in order to receive.
after a while, you learn that you really can't afford to not do it.
Yes. As always, guys, God bless and namaste.
Namaste.